Hello?
Hello.
Yes. I don't know. How many letters is it? That's, yeah, that could be it. 5723, right? Yeah, I'm on now. We're just starting. Yeah. How's everybody doing? And there's a mute button on there if you want to mute, if you got background noise.
There we go. There we go. We're good.
Why is it plug in?
I was just telling everybody about muting if they have some background noise.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can do that. I'll just.
Yeah, if they want to speak, they can unmute and unmute themselves also.
I'm going to claim host and mute everybody, Master Smith, so you don't have to worry about it on your iPad. Okay, so, and it says I'm you, but I'm not you, so I will fix that. Hey guys, let's get started here. And who has some questions from the last few weeks? Doesn't seem to be letting me rename myself for some reason.
You have to do it when you log in, because I always had that problem. Because it was always logging me in as you.
Yeah, well, now you can also just click rename and you're good. So anyway, any questions from the last couple of weeks before we get started here? No? Well, that's always easy. Master Smith, I interrupted you right at the point where you were going to talk about doing co-promotions with summer camps and day camps and those types of events and activities last time. So today that might be a good place to start. What I might say in addition, as we're getting everybody logging in here, is as a quick recap, we spent a lot of time talking about in our first session about how to make sure your dropouts are low over the summer. Make sure you keep track of what their attendance is when they're going to be out of town, testing up to date on their progress evaluations and so forth, right? The second thing that we talked about early on is actually hosting camps yourself. Now, my argument generally is if you're going to do like a big camp and 50 kids, you really should start promoting that in January. Master Smith's and my one of the things we've always preferred to do, which is something you could launch now if you wanted, certainly for July or August, is the whole idea of a rank advancement camp. In other words, a very intensive 1 week or 2 week. And the advantage of that, as we were talking about, is the students who miss a week or 2 or 3 weeks or even a month of classes over the summer, it keeps them on track for their testing cycle and they don't get off track. The other thing we spent a lot of time talking about last time was the opportunity with movies, booking movie theaters, other live events, July 4th event, Victoria's Day in Canada, all the different types of summer events, Taste of, July 4th holidays, etc., Labor Day, all those types of big events. And the structure of that of they line up, fill out the information sheet, spin the wheel, win a prize, book an appointment. Perhaps you add somebody in a character costume so that they're coming through, filling out the information, spinning the wheel, winning the prize, and then going from there. We talked about follow-up systems from a standpoint of what the numbers typically are. 80% of the people you interact with will make an appointment. 50% or better show up. 50% or better enroll. We talked about schedule once as one source of an easy calendaring function that automatically follows up Rudy, I was talking to you, and you had a different one that worked better with French. What was that app, Rudy? Here, I'll unmute you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was, I choose Go Rendezvous. It's a Canadian application, so it's in French now. But it was, we talk about Boxy.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and it looked like a very comparable to Schedule Once. I didn't like the features overall quite as well as Schedule Once, but then if with Schedule Once, even we're always buying the professional edition, which means you can write the text messaging and you can write the email content. If you leave it, especially if you left it at the generic, and in your case, you're going to people who predominantly as first,
You're able to keep that.
you would want to be aware of that. So I'm going to mute anybody else who's not muted here for a second. So those are some of the things that we've covered so far, is hosting your own camp, doing a rank advancement camp, my arguments for why not to do camps, some of Master Smith's arguments about why to do camps, both of our agreement that the rank advancement for 1 week or 2 weeks or something like that over the summer is a useful thing to do. Master Smith, something we used to do in the summer as well is we have all these, big, nice camps up in the mountains, is we would actually rent out a camp for the week, mountain retreat, same place that the schools do retreat and the church camps do retreats. We would rent that out for a week and everybody go up there, sleep there the whole bit. I am progressively less interested in anything where the kids are going to stay at the school unsupervised, particularly like sleepovers, stay away camps, that type of thing. Just anymore, there's too much liability and too much potential. There's always been a lot of potential for there to be problems. It's just that anymore, whether it's true or not, you're guilty even if proven innocent. So I like to avoid anything that even have the appearance of any kind of issues or impropriety. But anyway, hey, let's shift from there. And
Can I clarify one
Sure.
thing? When you said, we both agreed or disagreed on a camp, if you're going to do a camp, I do agree with you. The only way to do it is to make sure that you have additional staff to run it. Don't try to use your regular staff, because if they're working in the camp all morning and afternoon and then have to run the school at night, even if they have the wherewithal to say they want to do it, their proficiency goes down the tube pretty quick. So you really need to have a separate staff to do that. When you do the rank advancement camp, though, that I found that you can fill your school quickly from the inside out. We would advertise the camp, but those people would just be our extras that we would be bringing in, that we would try to enroll into a regular program, but use it as a feeder. But if you're going to do a rank advancement camp, just however long your cycle is, however many lessons you need, that's how many they're going to need to do in the camp. And the camp, we would estimate out about 2 hours of training per day. Even though the camp was 6 hours, we didn't want to, do 6 hours of martial arts training. So we would do 2 hours a day. And so however many lessons you need to graduate normally, just make sure they get that many lessons in the camp.
Yeah, absolutely. And my biggest argument about all of that is that it's like, when people add cardio kickboxing, or I'm a Taekwondo school and I add an MMA program, is what usually it is the individual owner operator doesn't know how to make a good enough business doing their primary thing. And they're looking for crutches and additional things to prop them up. And over the summer, I see a lot of school owners who think the only way they can do good revenue is by having a summer camp. And then what happens, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because they utilize their primary staff to do the camp, put 90% of their focus on the camp, the school numbers drop, and then that reinforces for them that it's hard to do good numbers in the summer, which of course is the wrong conclusion. You can do huge numbers of enrollments in the summer. You can keep students without much attrition. It may be true that week to week you have a 10 or 15, even 20% drop sometimes in attendance because of vacations or because of July 4th holiday or whatever it might be. But the reality is it should be every bit as good as any other month on renewals. It should be every bit as good as any other month on enrollments. And in fact, going back 35 years, I've always had June be one of my best months of the year. But what we have discovered is so many different ways to make July and August best months of the year. Matt Smith, I think it would be fair to say that in the Mile High schools here in Sterling, Mile High High School there, and in most of our clients, July and August, if not comparable to the rest of the year, has been better than the rest of the year. And in the kids market, what happens is the best place I know to get kids during the school year is going directly into the elementary schools, and we have all kinds of great ways to do that. I see Michael Merton's on here. I know you guys have done thousands of students with that after-school program in Richmond. In fact, I was just talking to somebody who had learned it secondhand through you guys. But in the summer, what happens is there's not the one place you can go to get them, but there's 30 different places to go to get them. Everything from the community pool to the summer camps, whether it's a sports camp or it's Children's World or it's the community center, whether it's a Bible, what do they call it, Vacation Bible School type of setting, YMCA camp, YWCA camp, Boy Scout camp, Girl Scout camp. I don't know how many Boy Scout and Girl Scout camps we've done over the years. It's probably into the thousands. Every rec center in our area will have all kinds of different special events, some of them being all day, camps, some of them sport oriented, some of them just, basically disguised or direct daycare. But there's so many different places that you can go and get to the kids market. And the adult market is really similar. You have, especially in an area like upstate New York or in Canada or whatever, you've got so many different summer events and activities. If we were in Phoenix, it may be the opposite. But if you're in Colorado, we have just so many opportunities that the problem is taking advantage of them all. City-sponsored events out in the park, again, July 4th events, sports events, taste of type of festivals, just so many different things that it's hard to keep track of them all and participate in all of them. But Matt Smith, you were gonna talk a little bit last time, so let me shift it to you first. Talk about some of the opportunities with other people's camps and what some of the methodologies are there.
Yeah, and just before I get into that, just to tag onto what you said, what a lot of people don't realize is that, during the regular school year, that's really, it's much harder to find activities that you can do live events at. They're usually limited at best to the weekends because kids are in school and everything. And that's why when kids are out of school in the summer, there are so many things. So if you go to your community directory in your area and see all of the different things that are going on and get a little creative with your searches, you'll almost be able to do 3 or 4 live events a week if you were inclined to. Of course, how many events you're going to do is going to be determined by how many people you're getting off of each event. We have some of our members that are getting, they'll get 125 leads off of one event, get 100 appointments, and 50 of those will come in and take an intro, and 25 will sign up. So that's kind of the normal numbers on a live event. What I like about
and Matt Smith, I think we have Alan Ogle on here with us, or we did a minute ago. Yeah, there we go. West DMHK. Alan, Kelly, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Oh, and I just muted you. Okay, you're unmuted. You just did. Tell us about the event you did this last weekend.
It was the summer block party. It was at a little park down in Westminster. It was 2 hours long. They also did a movie in the park at the same time with it. So,
Tell us about that movie in the park. I really like that idea.
Well, but before you do that, let's talk about real numbers. So you were out there for 2 hours. So they had a block party and then a movie in the park, right? Is that the same event?
yes, same event.
Okay. And how many leads, how many appointments, how many intros so far?
We did 30. It was 31 leads. 26 were appointments out of those 31 leads. And we've had 5, 6. They've all spread out through this week. We've had about 7 come in so far in the last 2 days.
Okay, so say it again. Leads meaning name, address, phone number, email address at least. How
Correct.
many total?
31.
And then of those, how many actually made an appointment?
26.
Okay, so we have 5 leads that didn't make an appointment. 26 out of 31 did. Everybody take note of that ratio because that's I said at least 80%. That's better than 80%.
Usually everybody does the opposite when they don't know how to collect turn those leads into appointment on the spot.
Exactly.
So we're not talking about getting that appointment later. We're getting the appointment right there at the event on the spot.
Yeah, and to some extent, it's a discovery over the years that it's easy to do that, and to some extent, it's necessary because in the age of mobiles, it's harder and harder and harder to get people to answer their phone. Although one of the things, as a recap, we talked about last week was sharing the V-card information so that when you get the contact information, sharing that information, and then putting them into something like Schedule One, so they're getting text reminders, email reminders, but you're already in their contact information, so when you call them, they know, at least if they're avoiding answering the phone, they know they're avoiding you, as opposed to just a number they don't recognize. Okay, so
just to make it a little more visual for everybody, can you tell us, Alan, they had a movie in the park there they're doing for a community block party. And did you set up your booth with your spin wheel? What was the layout?
Well, they had a section where all the booths were at. That's where we were set up. We had our canopy up, the spin wheel, table, the whole works. Yeah. They had, of course, some food, and the firefighters, police department were there as well. And then off to the side of us is where they were setting up for the movie in the park. So they were filtering people through from the food over to our booths to talk to everybody, and then over to the movie. Okay.
And so you had your canopy with your banners and things like that. So, and your spin wheels. So you were very visible for people when they walked by.
Correct. Yep.
And again, don't let anybody fall victim to the idea of you're going to do a big booth, you're going to put chairs behind the table, have 2 teenagers sit there looking bored and accomplish anything. It's not that. You've got staff out in front. Nobody's ever allowed behind the table. You got the prize wheel. Alan, did you ever have anybody out there in any kind of costume or character?
No, we're just in our uniforms out front, just talking to everybody that walked by.
Yeah. And so one of the things that does plus events like that is, have the teenagers draw straws. Whoever get the short straw has to wear the panda costume or whatever that might be. That does help. I'm not joking about that, but always do it in the right order. They give you information, they spin the wheel, they make an appointment, then they get a picture with Captain America, or with the current one out. It'd be Incredibles next, and the last one was Solo, the Star Wars. Okay, so my mind is a sieve here. 26 appointments out of 31 leads. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And you said 7 or 8 have been in so far. Was that right?
4 or 5.
That's 2 days. That's only 2 days, right?
In 2 days, yeah. 6 people. actually.
So 6 so far. A realistic expectation is 12 to 15 intros. It can be more. Sometimes, again, Master Smith, you may have said it last time, sometimes the slower the actual volume of traffic is, the higher the show rate is, because it gives you more time to talk to each individual, build rapport, answer questions, talk to them about the program a little bit. It is the argument for developing a lot of bench strength so you have more people, parents and students who can be out there with you. But 6 so far. My guess would be it ends up being probably 15 intros. And Alan, would you say realistically probably half of the ones that come into intros will enroll?
Yep, realistically, I'm shooting for more, of course. Speaking of bench strength, our last black belt testing that we had up in Loveland, we weren't able to do a booth on Sunday. We had some parents run it for us.
Yeah.
And we actually ended up getting, I believe it was like 5 or 6 people enrolled from that.
Good.
We weren't even at that event. So,
yeah.
Parents are good to help out.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a good lesson is, as long as you train the people that are there running the booth, you're not just letting them wing it. That's the advantage of these live events. I have people that have done live events and they tell me, oh, those don't work. I didn't get anybody to make an appointment, or I only got a couple appointments and they didn't show up. Well, that's not because of the event you did. It's the way you were running the event, because we have many, many schools, and we find that the worst case scenario are the percentages that Master Oliver was talking about, whereas out of 100% of your students that are people that spin the wheel, 80% will make an appointment, and out of that 80 that make the appointment, at least half of those 50% or 60% will show up, and then half of those will sign up. And
sometimes as many as 70 or 80% will show up.
Yeah, that's we have higher, but we tell everybody that that's kind of like your minimum expectation, so they don't think that they're going to catch everybody.
Yeah.
But go ahead, Rudy.
Yeah, on your program, do you show us how to be on the booth, how to talk to people? Do you have the perfect plan?
Absolutely. Now, it really is. I'm going to say it's not that complicated. But since Alan just had that many appointments in 2 hours, Alan, let's role play with you a little bit. So tell us what you say to get them to spin the wheel.
I just tell them, come spin the wheel for some free karate lessons. I keep it simple.
There you go. Okay, and then they spin the wheel. What do you say next?
I let them know we're with Mile High Karate. I tell them we're up on 112th and Federal. We're scheduling some appointments to come in for that first free lesson, and just fill out some basic information. We'll get you guys scheduled. And I kind of just give it to them, and there you go.
Okay.
The thing to remember there is that the booth is set up properly, and that you have the clipboard with that paper for them to fill out that has the right contact information. You have your intro appointment schedule on the bottom of that paper. So all you have to do is circle the date when you're doing it. And the line that we teach everybody to say, as people are walking by, we just say to them, you want to spin the wheel and win a prize. You just say that simple line, want to spin the wheel, and we'll see a child walking by and we'll say, want to spin the wheel and win a prize? And then the kid will usually look up at mom or dad, and then I'll look at mom or dad, and then I'll say, is that okay, mom? And they'll go, oh yeah, sure, come on over. And then I'll say, okay, well, just fill this out for me then. And now they start filling it out. Now they spin the wheel and they win a prize. Everybody who spins the wheel gets 2 weeks free of classes. And then on the prize wheel, they come by the school to pick up their prize. And that's why we're setting the appointment for them to come for their first orientation class and to pick up their prize.
Yeah.
So
And
a reason to come to the school.
But we've also said, have you had a chance to spin the wheel yet? We say that too sometimes.
right. And I would note, get the contact information before they spin the wheel. But make sure you're not just getting name and email address or just name, email address, and phone number. You want to make sure you have mailing address. And one of the things in Alan's case, the 5 that didn't make an appointment, I would be on the phone to them. I would text them. I would mail them a sequential step of physical mail. I would email to them. Again, people want to make it about email, but just anchor in. Email is dying a slow and painful death. I wrote that first book on how to market a martial arts school with online like 18 years ago now. And back then I loved email because it was in the, you've got mail era. Remember the Sappy movie where she's watching the AOL icon for the email, the mailbox thing to go like that. But no, it's long past that. Last stat I saw is the average person gets 4 pieces of physical mail in the mailbox every day and over 145 emails per day. So, far from being excited for an email message, people are overwhelmed and frustrated and don't even want to look. Now, the next piece of that script, going back to what Rudy was asking, and Rudy, this is all stuff for our ongoing members. We have a member website with videos and pictures and scripting and ongoing discussion about what's making this work. So to answer your question for our ongoing members, absolutely. But let me give you the other piece of script, because here's what happens. If you send, an excited mom out there with inadequate training, they'll get the prize wheel spun. They'll probably get the contact information, but then what they'll get is, 8 out of 10 people will say what? Well, I need to go home and look at my calendar. I need to check on the soccer schedule. I need to ask dad. I need to ask mom. They'll get some version of the, I'll get back to you later with that time. I can't schedule it right now. Right? And so what you've got to have is the script for that. And Rudy, the script is, I have to translate it to French, but it's really simple. Is you say, absolutely, Mr. Jones, you didn't come here looking for a time next week to schedule a martial arts class. However, why don't we tentatively pencil a time in? We'll hold a spot because we're going to be really busy next week. I hate to see Joey not get a spot for that. I'm going to give you our phone number, email address, all of our contact information. If you get home and that's not a good time, just let me know. Tentatively, would the time on Monday or the time on Tuesday be better for you? And typically what happens is that starts the conversation of, well, I know we have an activity on Monday. I'm working Tuesday evening. Do you have anything later in the week? And then, well, I have Wednesday at this time, Thursday at this time. Well, I think we probably should be able to do Wednesday. Okay. Well, we'll hold that spot. And when you get home, let us know. If that's not going to be good, just let us know. We'll schedule another time, right? Now that takes it from 20% up to about 80% making appointments in rough numbers.
And the show rate will increase tremendously if right then you have your business cards and on the back of it you have your appointment time where you're just their appointment, you'll write in the date and the time, just like a doctor's appointment or a dentist appointment. You know how they'll give you that appointment card that's a business card size that you can put in your wallet so you don't lose it. And now they have something that they don't have to remember it. I have some parents that, nowadays with technology, they'll go to their phone and right there and put it in their schedule. But I still give them the card because that has our number and contact information for them to follow up with us if they're not going to be able to make that time. Then we can set up another time for them.
Yeah, well, and the show rate will improve if you give them a robust packet of information about your school, heavily laden with testimonials. But you do want to give them the confirmation card, make sure there's a map to the school, there's the address, there's phone number, email address, all that stuff, right? But I always want to give them, 4 or 5 sheets of paper. I wouldn't give them like a trifold brochure. I don't ever find those to be very useful. What I would do is a page about, if it's for a child, the kids program, if it's for an adult, the adult program, testimonials, more information about the school, etc. The other thing to keep in mind is what we were talking about, the V-card thing, is if you can share with them right then and there, say, Ms. Jones, what is your phone number? I'm going to share our contact information so that you'll have it in your phone, and you'll have the address to the school, you'll have the phone number. If you need to call us, you'll have it right there. If we call you for any reason to confirm or anything, you'll have it right there. So you share that V card, give them the appointment confirmation, give them a pretty robust packet of information. What I see a lot of times is people will be just so happy to get the lead that they won't make the appointment, or they're so happy to have made the appointment they don't do anything to excite them and educate them more, so they're going to be enthusiastic about coming down. You want them to be excited and impressed about the program. And that also goes with something like Schedule Once, where you're sending them links to testimonials and sending them, informational videos about your school, etc. But Master Smith, what we promised 30 minutes ago, we were going to talk about what do you do with the actual daycare, summer camps, and so forth around your school. What are some of the ways to do that? Why don't you address some of that for them? And thank you, Alan, for that feedback. I guess we could, before we go, anybody have any questions specifically for Alan? I mean, that's I would be tickled to death with 31 leads, 26 appointments, 15 intros, 7 enrollments from 2 hours work, right? In our terms, those 7 enrollments are going to be worth over $40,000 in revenue. Each one should be worst case $5,000, probably more like $6,000 or $7,000 each. $6,000 for 7 enrollments is $42,000 in long-term revenue from 2 hours of labor marketing wise, which again, in my case, when I started doing these things as in movie theaters, oftentimes we had 13 theaters going at the same time. I really wasn't out there doing any of them other than just making sure everybody was doing their job. But any questions for Alan before we move into the next topic? No? That's easy. This is a pretty easy group, Master Smith. They aren't pestering us on this stuff.
We just covered everything so well.
Well, yeah, and until tomorrow when they realized there was that burning question.
Yeah, write them down and save them for next week, because we have 2 more of these
exactly
day summer sessions.
That's
Okay,
exactly.
so let's talk about the summer camp. Some people don't have the space or the staff to do a summer camp at their school. Well, I tell them they can still benefit from what we like about the summer camp is that we have the opportunity to bring in a lot of new students. And, some schools run a summer special and they offer a 1-month or a 2-month class for everybody to get them in. But remember, that's not going to build up your gross of your school much unless you learn how to convert those into regular enrollment. So there's nothing wrong with having a special summer program as long as you treat them like a normal intro, which means we're going to try to upgrade them or renew them in the first couple lessons. So if we're not going to do a summer camp at our school, we know that in our area, there's a ton of people that are doing summer programs.
Well, or even if you do a summer camp, the only gap with if you're building a huge summer camp is some of these guys, although most of them won't, some of these guys are going to see you as competition, right? It's why it is rather difficult to be in the transport after school care business and then get cooperation from all the local daycares because they view you as a competitor. But even if you are, Master Smith.
Yeah, we don't do the aftercare before care. So for our daycare places, they don't see us as competition. They see us as an ally.
Yeah.
And So what we do when we go in there, we give them the opportunity to teach a special summer anti-bullying program, or building self-confidence for kids, street safe kids. So whichever program that we want to aim it at. But the idea is to have about a 6-lesson program. So we've kind of modeled it around the same system we do for when we're going into the public schools, when we're doing what we call after school program there. And the difference between our after school program and a lot of the other ones that people do is they tend to do them for the whole year. They do it as a full program. What we do is we do it as an intro, as a feeder, and have a graduation at the school. And that way we have the opportunity to get them into the school, get them into some classes, and see the benefits of our program. So it's so easy to reach these people. You know, if you go to any of the big pools, we have county pools, public pools, and they bus these kids in from all of these camps all day, every week, tons of them. There's lines going out the front of the camp. So we would send our staff over there to talk to whoever's in charge of the camp and find out who was running it, where it was. And then we would set up a time to go by and talk to them, and we would address it the same way we would as a school program, except in our school program, we usually run it as a charity for the school. They either do it for a charity organization like Cancer Awareness or one of those charities, or they'll do it for a school function to raise funds for the extra funds for the school. So if it's a 6-week program, there is a fee for it. And it's up to you what you do with that fee. If you want to keep the fee yourself, if you want to donate that or split that with the school, however you want to do it, it's strictly up to you.
And let's interject here for a second, Matt Smith. From kind of the range of things that you can do with a summer camp, and there's a broad range. There, like here in Colorado, there are camps where really all they are is a bus. They all meet somewhere. They load the kids up in the bus. They take them to the Tuesday morning showing of Shrek at the local theater. Then they take them to the pool. Then they'll take them to the bowling alley. There are camps that really don't have a physical presence other than that. We've had it where all summer, like every hour on the hour practically, a bus pulled up in front of the school, unloaded the kids. We taught them a free introductory class. The bus driver on the way off would give us the list of all the kids, meaning parents' name, phone number, email address, in most cases mailing address. They'd give us a list of them. And now what we had a pretty good list of leads that we could follow up later today.
And
one of my staff
we would make sure that it was a pre-registered thing. So we would already have that list, because the parents have to fill out a permission slip.
Right.
And if they go to the pool or wherever they're going, they're going to have to fill out a special slip to make sure that they understand that they're not going to hold that business responsible for anything that happens, kind of thing. So
yeah.
They're used to doing those kind of things. If they go to Rebounders, that trampoline place, the parents have to fill out a release form or a hold harmless form type of thing.
Yeah, and the purpose is not
those. Yeah.
The purpose isn't to have the lead. It isn't to have the release. It's to have the lead information. But I was going to go through a quick overview. That's one way that you can, run some traffic through from daycares or summer camps and so forth. Another way is there are sports camps, Boy Scout camps, Girl Scout camps. You can go through the list. There's a long list that may be 3 days, a week, 2 weeks, that maybe aren't all summer, right? I know around here there's Boy Scout and Girl Scouts where they go out to the lake for a week. Sometimes, they're not overnight. They're just, during the day. So all of those, we do the equivalent of what we would do in an elementary school, going back to what you said, a minute ago, Matt Smith, is like we would do a PE teacher of the day in the elementary school. For the scout camp, we would do a little probably 1 hour class where they're out the lake, and the instructor goes out to them and does a little martial arts class. But as you said a minute ago, Master Smith, on Monday, they would get a permission slip, turn it in on Tuesday, and we'd show up on Wednesday. Now, a third element, which I want to clarify from what you said, Master Smith, is let's say you have a camp with the YMCA or with a community center or with Children's World, or maybe here we have maybe 1 out of 5 of our local elementary schools have camps at the elementary school. Let's say you have one where most of their kids are there either all summer or they're there for a 4-week block. So they might register for June, they might register for July, they might register for August. Then you could do what you're talking about, Master Smith, is you go in and teach a little class, have them register, and then go in and teach them 4 times or 6 times over a couple of 3 weeks. What I always am cautious about with those is if it's a camp that has like 200 or more school-age kids, I can go do that and I'll get 20, 25 into the ongoing program. However, it's a camp that has 32 kids. I'm not going to go do something where they register for something we're going to come in over and over again, because I may only get out of 22 kids, I may only get 4 of them. And then every day it may be 2 of them are consistent and 2 of them are in and out. So then that becomes a waste of time. So I can do permission slips and do a 1-dayer. With a lot of the ones where they have a lot of churn of the kids, I might do permission slips 1-dayer in June, then I might do it again early July, might do it again late July, might do it early August, might do it late August, knowing that 50, 60, 70% of the kids are going to be a different group of kids, right? So you have at one end of the spectrum, their bus pulls up and brings them to you. The next level is you have going and doing a little 1-dayer at these scout camps or sports camps, the things that are 3 days or maybe a week. At the next level, you have going in multiple times for the bigger camps. At the next level, you have going in and doing a 4-day or 6-day thing where they register for it after you've promoted it. Pick up from there, Master Smith. What would you add to that?
Well, you now covered it pretty good.
I always like doing that.
You gotta pick them bones clean.
It's a goal in my life to leave you speechless. It's such a rare thing.
Yeah, that I would add that we'll do is some of these camps have an ongoing registration where their kids are in there for a week, and then there's a different group of kids the next week. Some of them, the kids will be there for 4 weeks straight. So I try to find out what kind of camp it is, because if it's a weekly thing, then I can hit that camp 4 weeks in a row maybe and get, hit a different group of people every time. You did mention the rec centers, and I already told you about the swimming pools. We find that those 2 places, especially our rec center here, our community center, that's within a half a mile of our school, they have a big gymnasium with basketball courts, and they have a wall rock climbing thing. They have a gym there. They have a swimming pool. They have game rooms. So they have a lot of campers that come in there that use the pool, that use the rock climbing thing. So I just make sure that we have one of our staff members going by, finding out whose camp it is, where they're headquartered. And some of them are, like you said, they're on a bus from place to place. So we kind of, sometimes that person that is leading the kids is not the one that's the head of the camp. They're just one of the staff, and they don't know how, they're not the person usually to talk to. So you usually need to get the contact information of, and I usually tell them, hey, I want to get my kids signed up for your camp. Who do I call to get that done? And they'll usually give me a card or a name and a number, and then I'll call that person and talk to them. So you've got to get good at how to get the right contact information to get to the right person. And those are a couple of the places that that I find that were the biggest. That Rebounders place I was telling you, they do the same thing. They have during the summer, they're booked with summer camps all during the week, from one bus to another bus. And they're like you said, Master Oliver, one bus will drop them off and they'll do an hour and they'll leave, and then another bus will come in. So you can sit there in one day and hit about 6 different camp, contact information. So it's not real hard to do if you get a little creative, if you get your butt out of your school and you go out into your community and you find out what's going on. The biggest problem I find with school owners is they sit in their school trying to figure out what to do rather than going out and actually doing something. So summer is not the time to sit around. The summer is a time for you to get out there. There's a lot of groups that you could capitalize on and be able to pull in. I mean, if you could pull in any of the numbers just like Alan did, and his was just a 2-hour deal. Yeah. But you'll find some of these camps will have, like you said, 200 kids in it. And but in those 200, we're not going to teach all 200 of them because we're only going to teach the ones whose parents fill out the permission slips that have approved for them to participate in the program.
Yeah. Well, what I would add about that is, you know, what we're talking about is a fair amount of labor-intensive stuff. But the reason why I don't like you book yourself up all summer with kids in your school from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. in addition to your normal school operations is now you've got all this other stuff that you can do that's very productive. And, you know, if I go out and maybe 2 hours to get 7 enrollments, let's say that's an outlier. But if I spend 6 hours marketing in a day and only generated 2 enrollments from that, that's $12,000 in revenue generated for that day's effort. That beats the heck out of most, you know, summer camps. I see friends of ours who will be, you know, I got 10 kids and they're paying, you know, $200 for the week. So I've got $2,000 this week to be there all day, every day for 5 days. Well, I would never do that. And I would never have my staff do that because the return on each hour is so weak compared to what the return is on all the different marketing opportunities during the week. And second, it's not worth burning your staff out and driving the rest of the normal school operations into the ground. You know, if again, it doesn't take much. If one enrollment is worth $5,000 to $8,000 to your school, so let's say worst case $5,000. If one enrollment is worth $5,000, then what activity could you do every day that was going to generate at least one enrollment? Well, I could go through the list. We could come up with 50 of those, right? Master Smith, you went through a list. We gave everybody the recordings of the all the grassroots marketing effort. Pretty much everything on that list will generate 1, 2, 3, 5 enrollments each per month.
And I'll give you the counterpoint to the summer camp thing. The only reason that I did it, and I had 2 reasons. One, I wanted to give those kids that were not going to be there for the summer or are gone for part of the summer that would be off cycle and their training a chance to catch up.
Yeah, that's the rank advancement idea, which is, I think is great.
And the second thing would be to get those basic students that are not on our leadership black belt training yet, to motivate them in the summer by accelerating their training. And I find that I have a very good conversion rate of those basic students that do the summer camp that renew to black belt training. And then, of course, we have our new students that are coming in just for the camp and converting them to regular students. So you got 3 different things that you're going to be hitting. But the key on that is, number one, I don't want to use your regular staff. I did try that before, and what my school went up in camp, the school went down in gross, so we ended up staying about the same anyway. But when you said that somebody's worth $5,000, some people might not catch that number. See, an enrollment is going to be worth about, $2,000 to $3,000 on a basic enrollment. But when they renew to a black belt level of training, we know in every one of our schools what is the average value of every student. And you can do that based on the total gross of your school compared with the total enrollment to give yourself an average student value.
Yeah, and let's run an actual number, an approximation of lifetime value. Let's say that I did $500,000 in revenue last year and did 100 new students to make the number easy for me to calculate in my head here. That's $5,000 average revenue per person. Now, if I did 750,000 last year from 100 new enrollments, that's 7,500, right? Or if I did 200 enrollments from 1.5 million revenue, that's now, again, 7,500 per person. That's the type of numbers we want to be running, is between $500 and $7,500 per student, approximate lifetime value, which is the enrollment and the renewal and whatever else income they contribute to the school. Really, I'm only focused on tuition. But that's the way you focus on that. And where I see a lot of small broke schools is, the average person who enrolls is going to be worth $800. Well, if that's the case, it makes it difficult to justify big marketing budgets, makes it difficult to justify big labor. That's why a lot of times I don't like the cardio kickboxing programs. If you look at two ends of the spectrum, transport after school care, you might have $6,000 a year. You might have the average lifetime revenue of $15,000. That's a really great thing. On the other hand, you might have a cardio kickboxing program that's dropping out 25% a month, and you're charging $79 a piece for that. Well, your average lifetime value is less than $300. I would never touch that. I have no interest in that whatsoever. And that's not to say that you can't create a fitness-oriented program that works right, but it's got to be, the tuition is right, the longevity is right, everything else. Any questions on anything that we've talked about so far?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
How are you?
Good.
I had a question about two questions. First one, sometimes toward the end of the year, gym teachers let me come in and I'll do like a guest gym teacher day and get some leads that way. Is there a way you recommend to, I haven't had much success with those because we pass out flyers at the end and then never really get much success on follow-ups. Because I don't have the emails or the contacts of the kids. And how do you get around that barrier of asking for that information? First of all, you want to get into the school. That's the first big thing. But then getting the extra information. I don't know if some of the teachers or the administrators are sensitive about releasing that information because they know it's for sales and things like that.
Well, no, they're sensitive about it, but reframe it for yourself. Is public school, U.S. and Canada, there's regulations against them giving out kids contact information. Canada is worse than the U.S. However, there's no regulation about whatever information a parent can give to a business about their family or about their child, right? So what we've mentioned it already, is that's the idea of the permission slip. The term school talks, I have boycotted that in our environment, because what it is it's somebody borrowed an idea that I started doing in the 80s, but they missed the ingredient that made it work. See, I can go in and do a demo for 500 kids, or I can go into Mrs. Jones's third grade class with 30 kids, and I give them all literature and say, hey, come down on Saturday morning. We're going to have a special class for you guys. It's not that I get zero results. It's that I get anemic results. What happens is I get frustrated with all the labor I'm putting in for hardly any results.
Yeah.
But I can change one thing, right? The one thing I change is I'm going to go in and teach 500 kids PE classes. Before I go, we pass out permission slips to all of the kids. The permission slip is parent's name, mailing address, email, phone number. And again, Derek, you mentioned email. I could care less anymore about email. The only thing I like really about email is I can find them on Facebook with an email address easier. And I'm overstating that case. You know, we'll do sequential autoresponder email all day long, but I can also use the email address to find them in Google so Google can retarget them. I can also use the email address to find them in Facebook so that Facebook can retarget them. But what I want is I want mailing address and mobile phone number. And by our testing, if you get a bunch of families who have given you phone number, even if you didn't ask specifically for it to be a mobile, we're finding 80% of them are mobile or mobile friendly, meaning you can send a text message to the number, right? Now, there are some home systems where, you know, their IP, whatever you call it, IP addresses where they can accept text messages. They're not necessarily a cellular phone. But what I want is I want to have the ability to call them. I want to have the ability to text them. And I want to have the ability to mail them stuff. And then if I've got an email address, I have the ability to email them, retarget in Facebook and retarget in Google. My follow-up with them would be all of the above. The other thing that I always did, Derek, is if we're going into XYZ Elementary School, Leewood Elementary was one of them we would do. I can go into USA Today and pull a mailing list of all of the kids in that neighborhood. It's not all, but I can go into the neighborhood, mark on the map the territory for that elementary school, and I can get a pretty good mailing list of that neighborhood independently of the school. But the permission slip is the most important thing, because what it does is if there's 500 kids, I'm just using that number to make it easy, is I'm going to get 70 or 80% of them turn in permission slips. So now I've got, let's say round numbers, 400 permission slips. On that permission slip, it's going to say, for all the kids at Leewood Elementary, and it's probably a more generic slip, so I may not use the name of the school, but it's going to say everybody who participates in our program today will receive 2 free weeks of lessons and a free martial arts uniform. It's $100 value. If you would like us to contact you to schedule a time to come in for that, check yes, right? Now what happens is 400 permission slips, I probably get 200 of them, check yes. Now I've got 200 leads who have given me permission to call them and schedule an appointment. Now, back in the 80s, when we did this, we would just aggressively telemarket all of them. What's happened more recent, well, what happened 10 or 15 years ago is people got mad about getting called on Sunday night during dinner. So now you would get at least one mom who'd go complain to the principal if you were telemarketing to the entire list. So we went to getting permission to call them. The next iteration, the problem is, as it shifted to mobile, is people just don't answer their phone if it's an unrecognized number. So you have to realize that when you are calling them, you call, you leave a message, and then you immediately text message them. And you realize that, the most effective is talking to them on the phone, but you got to get them to answer the call. Second most effective is text messaging them. But don't be cheap. Don't be afraid to mail to them 3 times or 5 times or 10 times. You always, anytime you get a lead, you want to have a mailing address.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Does that make sense, Derek? But don't miss the point is, just going into the elementary school, doing a school talk, and then passing out flyers and inviting them down to the school. It's not that you don't get any results. It's just, notice the comparison is if there's 500 kids, Derek, how many would you typically get that contacted you after you did something like that?
Oh boy. The last time I did that, I got, I may have seen, it's maybe 100 kids, maybe like 12. It was really low, really low.
Okay. Well, and compare that with you get 80 permission slips, 40 of them that said they were interested, 20 of them make an appointment, right? Or more. So just the comparison there, what it usually does is it triples or more the response. Usually I'm seeing it 5 times. And there is another marketing principle built in there is you always want to be able to be proactive, meaning you want to be able to contact them, not put literature in their hand and hope that they contact you, right? So what I always want to have is their contact information so that I can keep showing up in their mailbox, keep showing up in their email box, keep showing up in their text message, keep calling them, again, with permission, until I get to that point that they've responded or not.
Okay.
I have
Rudy,
a
have a
question.
question?
Yes, just to be sure if I understand all. You teach a class like 200 kids at school. You give them the kid a permission slip. They give back the permission slip for their parents, and the parent check yes, and the kids bring back the permission slip at school. I'm
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah, the kids bring the permission slip back to the school and they give it to you.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in most elementaries that I've dealt with, they tend to have a system where they're communicating with parents, and they may, like, I have a 10-year-old, and they do a voice broadcast every Sunday. They have an email list, and they have Friday folder. So in Friday folder, they put, all the recreational things and then that are going on, and they may mention it on the voice broadcast. They may mention the email. You've got to figure out for that, and it's not a U.S.-Canada thing. It's not a Colorado-Virginia thing. Every school district, and in fact, some of the individual schools have their own little system, right? But you got to figure out what that is. How do they communicate most effectively with the parents? And I'll see people try these ideas, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, well I tried that, it didn't work." I'll say, "Well, what did you do?" They say, "Well, they put 50 flyers on the front counter in the elementary school." Well, with my son, I would probably never see that flyer in the entire year. However, if they mentioned it in the voice broadcast, they sent it in the email with a link back or an attachment, and they sent in the Friday folder a couple times, of course I'm going to see it. So if you're going in and doing the entire school, I would hope to have permission slips go out a couple of times so that you make sure you get them all. We'll have sometimes where it's the PE teacher is following up on the kids to make sure they come back. Other times it's the person at the front desk or something like that. But again, your target is you should be able to get 75-80% of the kids in the school to return the permission slip.
And make sure, Rudy, that remember this permission slip is given ahead of time before you're coming to teach the class. So the idea is that when you come to teach a class, you're going to collect the permission slips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't go your time you're going to teach the class and then hand out the permission slip, because then unless you've got an ongoing program, see, they're never going to bring them back in. You got to have it as a prerequisite to get in the program. And the parents follow that along. They're having a special class of martial arts, and I want my son to participate. Here's my permission. Follow me?
Yes.
And we posted on our Facebook page, Rudy, with some sample participation slips and permission slips.
On the private group or?
Yes, on the private group.
Okay.
I'll go in and I'll tag you in one of them, so that.
He's not a member, Jeff, so
he's not
have access to that. But we'll Rudy, we'll talk about that as we.
Yeah.
Anyway, any last question before we call it a day?
Yeah, I had one. This is Glenn Spanks.
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
You were talking about some of the programs as far as software. I'm assuming that you take the email information and putting it in a data bank that automatically sends stuff out. Is that correct?
You got
Jeff Cielo, hang on. I'm gonna mute Jeff there, since you were noisy, Jeff Cielo. But Glenn, say that again, because we had a little bit of.
Yeah, I was saying that I heard you say earlier about how you put some of the emails that you gather into some type of, I'm assuming, software that sends out an email to people. Was that correct?
Well,
Or are you doing it, or someone doing it for you all the time, or?
well, you have a couple different questions there, Glenn, and so I'm going to unpack it a little bit for you. Pick up on the, I could mostly give a shit about email anymore, right? Because people are getting 150, 200 emails a day. But number two, I think what you're referring to is we were talking about that Schedule Once app that can be set up to send 4 text messages and 4 emails as a reminder for the appointment. That app is called Schedule Once, and it lets you, and there's others like that. Rudy was talking about a different one that works better with French, but Schedule Once, I don't have anything to do with it. We're not getting a kickback or anything, but it's a simple little app, and there's a couple of others that I've seen that are comparable, but it's I think we pay $50 a month, and we're subscribing for everything in the world it can do. But what it does in an intro appointment is it'll notify them by email and it'll notify them by text 4 times. And then the email will give them an opportunity with a link where they can reschedule themselves, assuming you set up your calendar right. And it'll sync with an Apple Calendar. It'll sync with iCal. It'll sync with a Google Calendar. You can predetermine when your intro times are going to be so they can schedule themselves for another time. It doesn't replace calling them, confirming everything else, but it's a nice supplement. The third question I would unpack of that, Glenn, is what's called a sequential autoresponder. And an autoresponder means somebody opts into a website and they immediately get an email back. Or you can have an autoresponder, they opt in and they immediately get a text back. Or they opt in, they immediately get an automated voicemail back. We're setting up our lead sites where when they opt in, they end up subscribed to sequential automated voicemail, sequential automated text message, including automatically, sequential automated email, and sequential automated direct mail, and it automatically puts them into retargeting in Facebook. And I'm trying to figure out a way to automate putting them into retargeting in Google. I don't think we've got that set up yet. Now, of all of those, the immediately most effective is the text message combined with a live human being calling them. The long-term most effective is the direct mail. And of those, email is, from all the stats I've seen, is still more effective than retargeting on Google, retargeting on Facebook. But if I have my list of talking to them face-to-face, talking to them on the phone, communicating by text message, communicating by direct mail, they're all much more powerful than the email site. Was that a good answer for you, Glenn, or was there something beyond that?
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, you basically touched on everything that I asked about. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And I guess the other thing I might say is to give everybody another tool reference. For sequential autoresponder email, there's 3 big ones that work just fine. There's also some real sophisticated CRM programs that we use. They tend to be complicated enough that I don't recommend them, especially for a smaller school. But I'm not saying that that's you, Glenn, but I mean generally. The email autoresponder programs, Aweber is one of them, which is my preference, Constant Contact, and MailChimp. There's also a couple of systems that I like that do sequential autoresponder text messaging, which again is much more important than email. And again, I was joking about the we've got mail era. We're still at a point where you have essentially 100% open rate on text messages and a very high response rate. So the marketers, those of us who are marketers haven't ruined text messaging yet the way that email. It will get there. But for sequential autoresponder text messaging and voicemail, one app that I like is called Call Loop. It's very inexpensive. I think it's a nickel a text and a nickel a voicemail. And there's some interesting things you can do with it as well. With the automated voicemail and with text, you've got to be sensitive to having permission, recency, relationship. But there, if let's say you've got all of your brown and black belts and you have an event coming up, one of the things you can do is program it where if they answer the phone, it says, hi, hi there, sorry to have a computer calling you, but we wanted to make sure you're all set for our black belt retreat coming up this next weekend. Master Radcliffe is available by phone. If you press 2 now, you can be connected with him and he'll make sure you have your registration and everything up to date. So you can program it to be live answer where they can dial back in, and you can program it to leave a message on their voicemail if they don't answer, or you can have it be live answer and it plays a message, or live answer and it hangs up. Interestingly, when we've been broadcast voicemail to prospect lists, you'll get a lot of people who don't answer the phone, but then they return missed calls. So it calls, leaves a message on their voicemail. You'll get inbound calls, and they'll say, well, you just tried to call me. I missed the call. What did you need? And then you're into your conversation. So that may have been more of an answer than you were looking for, Glenn, but I think
no, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm asking questions. I know I learned in the military there's no dumb question, even though I'm sure there's some exceptions to that rule.
Well, what we find among martial arts school owners, and it's true of all small business owners, is the dumb questions are the ones where people have blinders on and have self-limiting beliefs, right? Is the whole premise of what we're doing now is summer isn't slow. Don't think of it that way. Don't have a self-limiting belief that you're not going to accomplish much. But most of the dumb questions are, how can you possibly get people to pay that much? You don't know the people in my area. And we haven't talked at all about pricing, but I talked to a school owner in Malibu, California. If you know Malibu, I mean, a beach house is like $10 million. And, a Malibu address, you're $1 million and up. And they said, you don't know my clientele. They're too smart to pay that much for martial arts. I talked to another school, in Dodge City, Kansas, basically said, you don't know my people. They couldn't possibly pay that much. Good friend of mine, smart people, Ernie Reyes Sr. and Tony Thompson, but I was doing some coaching for their staff one time. And I said to them, why is it you guys are in the middle of Silicon Valley and you're charging like a third what I'm charging in Denver, Colorado? And their response was, oh, you don't understand. The cost of living is so high in Silicon Valley, that's all they can afford. Well, the reason that the cost of living is high in San Francisco and Silicon Valley is they're making huge salaries, right? Same reason the cost of living is high in Manhattan. So, those are some of the things that we find that people say that just is stupid, that's self-limiting. But clarification on this is never a stupid question, Glenn.
All right, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay,
Any other questions before we call it a day?
We're about 15 over, but yeah, we'll close it up with any other questions anybody has.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll be back on the same channel, same time next Wednesday.
Yeah.
Get your questions, and if you go out and try one of these events and it doesn't work, or you need more information on it, join in next Wednesday and ask any questions. We're here to answer them.
Oh, one real quick one, please. Is there on the prize wheel, is there anything you can list or present as to what's on that prize wheel? Like, what are the possible, how many, is there anything listed anywhere we can take a look at on what works the best?
Well, here's the short answer, is mostly it doesn't make much difference. Okay. It's not about, it's just there's this thing that people like to queue up, spin the wheel, and win a prize. I went to a little event up in Evergreen, Colorado, down the street from where I live, and there was this big fair out in an open soccer field, and there was one booth that had a line of 30 people queued up. None of the others did, except for the guy selling lemonade. And what it was is it was the State Farm agent, and they had a big prize wheel that made noise and lit up, and everybody was queued up to spin the wheel and see what they would win. I will say two things. Is what Alan had said earlier was that most of the prizes he was doing were lessons, right? 1 free lesson, 2 free weeks of lessons, a free week of lessons, things like that. I personally prefer things that are physical, a free uniform, rubber chuck, something like that, bag gloves. The reason I like physical is part of the logic for them to come down to the school is to physically pick up the free thing that they just won, right? But mostly it's just like putting somebody out there in a costume. It's to get attention, it's to get them queued up, and to give you an opportunity to have a conversation.
And I'll give him a quick answer on that, Master Oliver.
Yeah.
Remember, they're picking up all the prizes at the school, and everybody who spins the wheel gets 2 weeks free. And then on the prize wheel itself, we also have a birthday party, free pizza party, free karate t-shirt, free karate uniform, 2 more weeks free. So that would give them a month free, free pair of foam chucks. We also have these little karate book bags, they cost us $1.50 a piece. And we have these water bottles with our school logo and website on them that we give out too. So it depends on what prizes you have, but if you just wanted to do the ones without, then you can use those others that I said.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go. Pretty comprehensive answer on all of that stuff. But the one of the takeaways though is it doesn't matter that much what's on the prize wheel. Just don't make it like I wouldn't make it you win a free year of lessons, something like that. I much prefer to have it it's either something short or it's something that they come and pick up. It's not going to be some big package of lessons.
And I especially like the birthday party and the pizza party. A pizza party is used for somebody who wants to just have a karate party with all their friends. Could be their soccer team or their Boy Scouts or whatever, their neighborhood kids or whatever, but a whole group of people. So in my free birthday parties, that's a $200 value. So they're happy to win that, but I know they're going to bring me another 15 or 20 kids in with that party. So I'll usually put a couple of those of each of those on there, along with the uniform and t-shirt and foam chucks. And of course the foam chucks come with in that intro class, we'll teach them how to use those a little bit.
You bet.
Master Oliver, I have one more quick question.
Go ahead, Glenn.
Is anybody still using those little boxes where you put in different various locations?
Yeah, lead boxes.
Lead boxes. I mean, and if they are is it working for anybody? I mean, I wanted to know because I'm getting ready, to start making some, but before I went through all the effort, I wanted to see.
I would say it this way is lead boxes work as well today as they ever did. It's just that there are so many other ways to generate leads that are higher quality and ways to interact with them face to face that if I had my druthers, I'd rather do the 2 hours of what Alan did than put out a bunch of lead boxes. What we tend to recommend is rack cards versus lead boxes nowadays. And when we first started doing it, I was kind of skeptical. It's not going to get you a flood of students. And I mean, years ago, I had a boiler room set up. I had a full-time staff member putting out lead boxes. But with what I would say is, one, people don't answer the phone nowadays. You have to make 20 calls to get hold of them, right? Two is the quality of the lead in the lead box is a lower quality than the person you interacted with at a movie theater or a live event or something. The third thing I would say is, if you put rack cards out rather than lead boxes, go get like 300 locations out. And that's probably going to be good. It's going to cost you, a fifth or a tenth as much per each location. But it's going to be good for 4 or 5 enrollments a month if you keep that many out and rotate them.
The other thing with those, don't do lead boxes unless you have an automated system of contacting them. You really need that drip system. That's what we find works better with lead boxes, where you can put that in to contact them either by text or email or automated phone.
Yeah, and I generally, Glenn, there's so many other ways of getting traffic. I mean, all the way back to the 80s, I was flooding our schools with traffic from lead boxes, and then pretty quickly concluded that there were so many better sources of leads, and that we were actually getting kind of overwhelmed with the volume from the lead boxes, and underutilizing some of the other traffic, and our conversion rates were going down. So you've got to be aware of that. Does it work? Yes. In order to make it work, you've got to have a ton of locations out. You've got to have dedicated people making outbound calls. As Master Smith said, you've got to put them into a forever sequential autoresponder email drip list. You've got to put them into a forever direct mail list. You probably have to be careful about automated text and automated voicemail, because you can get in trouble if you don't have a bit of a relationship, and they're not going to remember having filled the slip out. So of the various things that are ways to go, it would be pretty far down my list generally.
Bandit signs would be better.
Yeah. So if that gives you some ideas.
What would be better? I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part.
Bandit signs and rack cards. So
Okay.
bandit signs mean just those little lawn signs called bandit because they're illegal everywhere.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
The rack cards, work pretty well. What's his
a rack
name?
card?
What's that?
What's a rack card?
Picture a trifold brochure holder.
Oh.
But usually we're doing a full color 2-sided card that's that size rather than a trifold brochure. Although when I first started in 1983, I printed like 10,000 trifold brochures and put out brochure holders, and it worked just fine. Again, it's one of those things that most people who do it, I'll ask them, well, how many rack cards do you put out? And they'll tell me, well, I did 200. But what they mean is I printed 200 cards and have them in 4 locations, 50 cards each. Well, that doesn't do you any good. You have to have like 200 locations, 300 locations, 400 locations. Just like with lead boxes. When we were doing lots of traffic with lead box, probably had 500 of them out. But the labor involved with that and the follow-up, I think there's a lot of other better ways to go.
Okay, well, I appreciate it.
You bet. Any last question before we call it a day? 25 minutes over our time limit? No? Okay. Thanks, guys. Look forward to seeing you next week. Oh, but before we do that, I meant to say, for everybody who's one of our members, we're going to our next live member meeting is in West Point, going to be on August 3rd and 4th. While I'm doing the rare occasion of getting on a plane, Master Smith can tell you how unlikely it is to get me off of the mountain in Evergreen, especially when my kids are out of school for the summer. But we're going to do a live one-day Fill Your School boot camp on the Monday following that on August 6th. We'll be in Manhattan, either the Renaissance or the Marquis Marriott, in all likelihood, right at Times Square.
New York City, Manhattan. Yeah.
Is there another Manhattan?
No,
it's not Manhattan, Kansas. No, we're gonna be in Times Square, New York City.
just to clarify.
Yeah. In New York City, Times Square, Marriott Marquis, or Renaissance. Everybody that I talked to from New York suggested that because it's easy to get in and out on the train and so forth there. But that'll be on August 6th. We'll be getting everybody out. What's that?
It's on a Monday.
Yep, it'll be a one-dayer. Designed for those of you who aren't ongoing members with us. Okay,
Yeah,
Thanks,
that'll be like a 10 a.m. to 2 p.m.
yeah, 10 to 2 or 10 to 3. We'll get done before rush hour hits on the backside so you can get back to your school that night.
Okay, have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.